WWE this past week saw the return of AJ Lee. Her return came after a longer absence than CM Punk's. And CM Punk's absence felt like a long time. And obviously, CM Punk is arguably a bigger name than AJ Lee. But CM Punk left the professional wrestling world back in February of 2014. He returned in August of 2021. So about 7.5 years between his returns, between him leaving and returning. AJ Lee left in April of 2015, returns in September of 2025. So about a 10.5 year gap for her. But she had returned, and kind of in the beginning of the program, I mentioned how it's crazy because only in this circumstance and with the story going on would her return be the finish, right? I think in a world where maybe she's only gone for 6 months or gone on injury, like a Becky Lynch or a Charlotte, and maybe she's coming back from one of those, her return wouldn't overshadow like a Brock Lesnar return like it did this past week on SmackDown. I think it had to do with the 10.5 year gap since she had returned versus Brock Lesnar, who hadn't been seen since SummerSlam. But just crazy to think that John Cena and Brock Lesnar, that segment, would open SmackDown and we'd end with AJ Lee and the match that we're going to get at WrestlePalooza. But I guess one thing I want to kind of talk about, which I got thinking, with the fact that AJ Lee has just made her return. Nikki Bella recently, obviously, was the last opponent for Becky Lynch at Clash in Paris. And I kind of want to talk about these names and maybe others like it in the sense that they came right before what we now know as the importance of women's wrestling, the Divas Revolution, right? Make women's wrestling important, the whole, give Divas a chance thing that happened right before AJ Lee. It was February of 2015 that hashtag give Divas a chance started to catch some weight. And then it was obviously people like Charlotte Flair, Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, and later on Bayley that became the four horsewomen of wrestling that kind of brought us to where we are right now. So I want to kind of ask you and debate this a little bit because now we have Nikki Bella and AJ Lee who came kind of not in the worst era, but in an era before this. What do you make of giving a lot of spotlight to some of these women who weren't a part of this quote unquote Divas Revolution? And I know AJ Lee and Nikki Bella were at the start of it, but do you think that they deserve to have the revolution, or do you think it was people like Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks who are the reason we have it? Meaning, like, did Kelly deserve the same respect as Becky Lynch, or is Becky Lynch the reason why we have the Divas Revolution and people like Kelly were bringing it down? Do you think it was bad creative, bad writing? Should we have been giving AJ Lee, Nikki Bella the chances back then? Could they have delivered if they got the chances back then, like the women do today?
Yeah, I do. I mean, Nikki Bella to me, I'll start with her first. Nikki Bella to me is somebody who is I think she's underrated. I feel like she's always constantly gotten better and better in the ring. And in this latest run that she's had, she's doing a hell of a job. Like she looks cleaner in the ring. Like she's hitting the ropes a different way. Like it's a whole different animal. And even going back then, I would say, yeah, because there, some people like her, like she works hard at it. She's worked hard at her craft. Same with AJ Lee. AJ Lee worked hard at her craft and did it for years. And even though she's been, gone out of the ring, so to speak, for the last 10 years, it's not like she's not working in the ring with her husband, CM Punk, and, still keeping herself going. Like she's also performed on Heels, the TV show with Stephen Amell. She's done stuff on that. Like so these two ladies, I should say, excuse me, these two women, let me go that way. These two women, they've definitely earned it. And I know it's a different era because, Nikki and AJ came from a different era than what we're seeing today. If it wasn't for those two ladies, we wouldn't have what we have today. I feel like AJ Lee kind of also like started in a different direction because she wasn't the normal diva at that time. Like she was so different. It was refreshing. It was enjoyable to watch. Like she was good in the ring, but at the same time, Nikki Bella is a brand and she's worked at it. Like she's not bad in the ring. So to me, I think they've earned everything that they've gotten.
What divas do you think get brought up? I know a lot of, obviously, out of respect, everyone says that there's, if it wasn't for you paving the way. But I mean, there are some out there, right, who got into the WWE not really necessarily to want to ever be Becky Lynch, want to be Charlotte Flair. They got in because exactly what it was in the 2008 time during the not Divas Revolution, Divas, championship, the total Divas era, I would say. They got in it because it's a good form of modeling, a good form to act, a good form to get yourself essentially out of WWE. So which of those, I guess, before do you think wouldn't really, like, if they made a return, you would say, no, you're from an era that was essentially holding this era back. I'll put one out there. I think it's a little bit overrated, right? I think like a Michelle McCool, right? Obviously, I think a Kelly Kelly is very like she can't really hold a candle to the people nowadays. I think she's a great nostalgia acting like a Royal Rumble, but I wouldn't like if the WWE was full of Kelly Kellys, we wouldn't have the divas wouldn't be main eventing, right? We wouldn't have the WrestleMania 35 main event like we did. But I think like even like a Michelle McCool, very athletic, right? Very fit. But I just don't when I see her, I could see if she was the head, which she was a Divas champion at one time, if she was somebody who was the head of the women's division right now, the women's division wouldn't be where it is. Is there any names that you can think of that you
Oh,
think would be kind of like holding the women's division back nowadays? I agree. I think AJ Lee.
Candice Michelle is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I agree right
Was
there.
it Torres?
Summer Rae.
Summer Rae, yeah, Summer Rae wasn't. And here's the thing, and I don't want to knock these ladies because their contributions to the business, whatever degree you want to debate about it, that's a whole different thing.
Mhm.
I still appreciate what they've done because to make it to WWE in some capacity, that is a great feat. Not a lot of people can say they've done it. So, but we just listed a few of these divas, so to speak. But I do want to give them their flowers in one aspect where you had to make it. Like, I mean, Eva Marie. I mean, she's another one. I mean, and then Maurice. I think Maurice. I could. You know what? I'll take Maurice back because I feel like she was more marketable. Like she could still go in the ring decent amount. Like to me, she was another version of maybe like a Nikki Bella, so to speak. So I'll take Maurice back on
Here's
that.
who I say are arguably like people who essentially you feel bad for because they didn't get the opportunities nowadays and could compete. Here are those people. I think Mickie James is obviously one of the people, and Mickie James has definitely made a name because she hasn't left wrestling. She kind of kept the women's revolution thing going on her end and like TNA and things like that. So she's definitely stayed in the relevancy of being able to put on, a good, match that's equivalent of a men's match. Obviously, Trish Stratus and Lita back in the day, they did the things that made it so that they main evented a Monday Night Raw. And it's crazy because back then we had that lull, right? Trish Stratus and Lita main evented a Monday Night Raw. And we talk about that with obviously like people like main eventing WrestleMania 35. But there's like the gap in between of like, well, when Trish Stratus and Lita left, that's when the Divas division kind of took a backslide a little bit. But I think Beth Phoenix, right? And again, the reason and the problem with like Beth Phoenix, no problem with her, but the people she was working with, like, you need a whole division. And that's like kind of thing. Beth Phoenix was leading that division, but nobody was really reputable. Like with Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair and Sasha Banks, even at the time, right? You didn't know who was going to win. They were both on equal footing, but Beth Phoenix was always like a China. She was always above everyone else.
I always liked. I think her name was Caitlyn. I think her name was. I liked her too. I thought she was. I mean, I'm not saying she's like a Lyra Valkyria when it comes to technical.
I mean,
ability.
Caitlyn reminded me a little bit of like an Ashley Massaro kind of thing in the punk rocker kind of setup.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a niche for that, and I felt like she got a decent run. I was surprised that her run ended and she hasn't been back. That's kind of I've always wondered about that one.
Yeah, and like I say, like AJ Lee coming back, obviously she hasn't been here since women have done anything of grandeur, right? She hasn't been in the WWE in over 10 years, right? Women main eventing, the multiple women's championships, essentially having the all women's pay-per-view. She was never a part of any of those, right? But I do have to give credit to people like Becky Lynch, Charlotte, and all of them because while the whole Give Divas a Chance thing started, it was because there was a 30-minute match on a Monday Night Raw that involved like a Nikki Bella. In fact, I think if we could like look it up who that match essentially, it was on February 2015. It was Emma and Paige versus the Bella Twins, a match that lasted around 30 seconds, and that's what started this whole Give Divas a Chance thing. But I think the reason why people were saying give Divas a chance, I don't necessarily know if it was because what they were seeing with them, but I think it's because what they were seeing down in NXT, where those women were tearing it up and they were doing what they needed to do to create the environment that we have nowadays. Obviously, we didn't have that in the main roster setting, so they weren't giving them a chance because they weren't Becky Lynch, they weren't Sasha Banks, they weren't those people. So they were saying like, hey, if they can do this down in NXT, I'm wondering if they could be doing this up on the main roster this whole time and you're just not giving them the opportunity. Is that what you think? Do you think that it's not necessarily those three women that we saw at WrestleMania 32 when they brought back the Women's Championship, got rid of the Divas Championship? Do you think it's not necessarily them who are tearing it up? Do you think it was more or less they could have been tearing it up, but they just weren't given the opportunity on the main roster with the people who were there, like AJ Lee?
Somebody, somebody like to that degree, like an AJ Lee. You mentioned like a Beth Phoenix. I'll go back to that. I think I would say this. I feel like those type of women didn't have a like a roster of talent to work with, so it never looked as clean as it really could have been. And I think with how deep this division is right now, I think you look back at like the AJ Lees of the world, you think of the Beth Phoenix, as you mentioned. It's one of those things where it's like, what could have been if we had a deep division back then with the Beth Phoenix of the world? I like imagine peak Beth Phoenix versus current Rhea Ripley right now. Like that would be a hell of a show. We didn't get that kind of stuff. Like there was always a couple really good female wrestlers over the years. It took until I would say the last, I would say 7 years, maybe. I might have my dates wrong, but in the last 10 years, obviously, like the division has blown up. And in WWE in the last couple years, it's like you can go down the list of talent, like a Lyra Valkyria, like she was in a great match with Raquel Rodriguez this past week on Monday Night Raw. Like, and the fans were loving it. Like you heard the chants. It was like, it's a whole different generation, and I'm thankful to be a part of it as a fan because we're getting away from the Jerry the King Lawler talking about puppies to watching these women literally steal the show and be the best match on the card every night.
I will say Nikki Bella, and it is. I don't want to discredit, but obviously you see like past versus present, and I don't know if that's ring rust but obviously that match at Clash in Paris, right? There was a few little slip up things that were mostly the Nikki Bella side of things, right? In the sense of she was obviously because she works different than Becky Lynch, right? Nikki Bella was taught in her a certain way to be more of that, female kind of wrestler, more softer, right? She's not there coming out of MMA. She's no Shayna Baszler. She's no Ronda Rousey. She's not one of those kind of people. You know what I mean? And the Becky Lynches and the Sasha Banks, they came up as hard hitters right from the start. Nikki Bella and things like that did not come up as that. I think AJ Lee will have a better opportunity because I think overall, just being in that environment really where she was never considered the model. She was never doing the talk shows. She was always under the umbrella of athlete, right? She'll be a little better when it comes to that ring rust, or at least, coming out and laying into the punches a little bit more, not, trying to be like she was in 2014, where she's going to slap someone around. She's going to be a little more rough. But speaking of AJ Lee, and now that she's back and she's now here in this era she never got to be a part of before, what do you think the future holds after WrestlePalooza for AJ Lee? And who are some people, I guess, you think that it'd be interesting for her to get involved with? I'll throw one out there. I think getting involved with maybe like an Alexa Bliss would be interesting because I think, Alexa Bliss is the kind of modern day AJ Lee in the sense of shorter in stature, more of the punk rock kind of
darker character.
Yeah, so I think that. But what are some people that you could see AJ Lee getting involved with? Back in the day, obviously, Daniel Bryan and that stuff, he's gone. But anything that come to mind post Becky Lynch?
Well, I mean, I'll start there. A singles match with Becky Lynch. I think there's going to be an intercontinental title between these two at some point. Why tease this whole intercontinental belt? AJ's like, oh, I got it. I forgot I'm wearing it. Why tease that kind of stuff if there's not something going on in the background? So I'll start there. I think after this tag match, I think there's gonna be an intercontinental title match between her and Becky, and I wouldn't be surprised if she won it, and then maybe she did some sort of open challenge going forward and gave other superstars a chance. I mean, I would like to see her in the ring with I'd like to see her like a Roxanne Perez. I mean, obviously we know the ties there.
Mhm.
Like she like Roxanne's a big fan of hers. Obviously, you check out the social media. I'm not going to go into it, but if you know, you know, like that would be fun.
Roxanne, yeah, took a picture with her like when she was like 12 years old, and now they took a picture together on the same roster. Roxanne Perez is a big fan of AJ Lee back in the day.
Speaking of fans from back in the day that are wrestlers now, Bailey would be fun to have AJ Lee. I think that'd be a fun time. I think obviously I mentioned Rhea Ripley, Raquel Rodriguez. I'll tell you one I really like, and I've already said her name a few times. To me, I think she's the best female wrestler in the business today, and it's Lyra Valkyria. I think she would be a lot of fun with AJ. I'm gonna sit on top of the Lyra Valkyria fan club. I think to me, she's the most technically gifted female wrestler on the WWE roster today, bar none.
With Becky Lynch, obviously now in this little group with Seth Rollins, I feel like for even after WrestlePalooza, there's going to be a lot of tie together where they're going to be very involved. AJ Lee obviously comes back with CM Punk, her real life husband. They've got that mixed tag team match. She's back to essentially defend the honor of CM Punk. How quick do you see her essentially being separated again? Meaning, I don't necessarily say they're on different shows, but where AJ Lee and CM Punk maybe go a whole show or weeks and whole programs where each other are not mentioned between them, where AJ Lee is like Lyra Valkyria, right? She's doing her own thing, and they're just maybe teaming up with other females, doing those kind of things, just not being a part of a storyline that also.
I think it happens quickly. It's not going to be a quick rip the Band-Aid off kind of thing. I think over time, as AJ gets into this next run that I expect that she's going to have, I think over time we're going to get further and further away from that. And obviously they're going to be on the road together. They're going to be on the same shows together. We get all that. But I think it's going to take a little bit of time. You can't just rip the Band-Aid off. I think gradually it'll be brought up less and less. And then CM Punk will do his thing. AJ will do his, her thing, excuse me. And then and same with Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. They were doing that forever. They have a child together. They're married as well. They've done that for years. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think all parties will go do their own thing eventually.
All right, AJ Lee back in the WWE. Another woman in the women's division, somebody from the past who has an opportunity to prove herself in the modern day, which she never did before. So we'll get to see that, if Divas essentially deserved a chance. This is what we get to see. I know it's different because they're older now, so it's not really a fair comparison, but it's an opportunity to really see if those exact women like Nikki Bella and AJ Lee deserve the opportunities back then, because now they're on the stage where they get those opportunities that they never did get to have before, and see if they can now deliver against the likes of the Becky Lynches and such. Should be interesting next couple of months when it comes to that.